Thank you for joining us today for this presentation on how to file the notice to terminate with the Housing Department. The information that will be provided today is general information. It's not intended to be legal advice and does not apply to properties located outside the city of Los Angeles boundary. It also does not apply to commercial units. To confirm whether or not the residential property in question is located within the city boundaries, you can check your utility bills. If you pay them to the Department of Water and Power, then you are within the city of Los Angeles boundaries. If you pay them to some other department, for example, Edison, you are outside of the city boundaries. You can also go to cemas.la.city.org, and enter your property address, and there, if you find the results, it should indicate you're in the city of Los Angeles. If no results are found, it means you are not in the city of LA. And that is important because the topic today, the rules today only apply to residential units within the city of LA. I would like to start by ensuring that the public is aware that whenever serving a tenant a notice to terminate tenancy in the city of LA, the notice must be based on one of the legal reasons to terminate tenancy. Those reasons are located on your screen, and they are divided into two categories: the at-fault reasons and the no-fault reasons. The at-fault reasons consist of 8 different reasons, ranging from non-payment of rent, violation of lease, and several other reasons. The one at the bottom, failure to comply with a tenant habitability plan, that one is only applicable to units that are subject to the rent stabilization ordinance. Reason number 8 does not apply to units that are subject to the just cause ordinance. On the right-hand side is a list of the no-fault eviction reasons. These reasons require that the owner file a declaration of intent to evict with the Housing Department and pay relocation assistance to the tenants. When you receive the slides, you'll be able to click on the hyperlink and see more details about the no-fault reasons. The no-fault reasons that are located here, there are 6. And please note that no-fault eviction reasons are only the 6 listed here. It does not mean notices to terminate tenancy that fail to list a legal reason. If a notice to terminate tenancy does not indicate one of these reasons on the slide, then it's a notice in violation of the law and should not be pursued by the owner. So what does this law cover? In January of 2023, the City Council amended the municipal code to implement a new requirement where property owners have to file a copy of their notice to terminate tenancy with the Housing Department within 3 business days after the date that it is served on the tenant. Failure to do so may be used by the tenant as a defense in an unlawful detainer case. And please note that ultimately it's the judge in court that will issue the final decision on an unlawful detainer case. This law applies to all residential units in the city of LA, regardless of whether or not it's subject to the rent stabilization ordinance or the just cause ordinance. This law also applies to all notices to terminate tenancy. So, for example, a 3-day pay or quit, a 30-day notice to move out, a 3-day notice to perform or quit, a 3-day notice to quit, etc. Any type of written notification that is served on the tenant asking them to move out requires that it be filed with the city of Los Angeles, with the Housing Department. The method of filing, there are 3 different ways that an owner can file their notice. One is online by uploading a copy to the LAHD portal. 2 is by sending a hard copy via mail. And 3 is delivering a hard copy of the notice in person to an LAHD public counter. Please note that online filing is the fastest and most efficient method to file a notice and will provide the owner a written verification via email of the filing, whereas options 2 and 3 do not provide you a written verification unless you specifically request one. The documents that have to be filed with the housing department are, number one, a copy of the actual notice to terminate tenancy that's prepared and served on the tenant by the owner or the owner's attorney. This is required to be filed with LAHD within the 3 business days. We recommend that the owner also include a copy of the proof of service, as that date is very relevant to the counting of the 3 days, the 3 business days. Secondly, LAHD also has created a cover sheet if the owner is sending a hard copy of the notice to terminate to LAHD via mail or delivering the notice in person at a public counter. The LAHD cover sheet essentially accomplishes the same goal or the same information that is gathered through the online system. The cover sheet is found on our webpage at the link that is indicated here. And an image of that page is here on the right-hand side. It's a 1-page form that the owner fills out, containing information about the property, such as the owner name, property address, number of bedrooms, and if known, the APN number. Tenant information, specifically the tenant first and last name, and if known, their phone number and email address. Please note that an owner only has to provide one tenant name on the cover sheet, even if the notice to terminate tenancy lists multiple tenants. The notice details located here is basically requesting that the owner select the notice type, which is asking, is the owner serving a 3-day, a 30-day, a 60-day notice, etc. It's also asking for the date the notice is served on the tenant. Right here, it asks for the month, the date, and the year that the notice is being served on the tenant or was served on the tenant. The form also contains a section for the owner to report the reason for termination of tenancy, which include the at-fault reasons here and the no-fault reasons here. The owner will select the boxes that are relevant, depending on the reason or the reasons stated on the notice to terminate tenancy that is being filed. As a reminder, if it's a no-fault reason, specifically these reasons here on the bottom, these also require that the owner file a declaration of intent to evict, which is separate from filing a copy of the notice of eviction. And an owner can see details about the declarations and obtain a copy of the declaration form at the hyperlink located here. Lastly, the form asks for rent details. At the bottom, the owner inserts the amount of rent that the tenant pays, and this number does not include surcharges or other fees. So for example, late fees are not included, systematic code enforcement surcharges are not included, only the full monthly rent. It's also asking the owner to provide the amount of rent that is due if the tenant is being evicted for non-payment of rent. If the tenant is not being evicted for non-payment of rent, so obviously there's nothing there. The tenant doesn't owe any money. Very important to note that if the reason for termination of tenancy is non-payment of rent, there is a municipal code that states that landlords may not evict a tenant who falls behind in rent unless the tenant owes more than the fair market rent based on the number of bedrooms in the tenant's unit. There's a hyperlink here that you'll be able to access to read more details about this rule. But also, we are including some additional information on this rule in the next slide. In this slide, you see the economic threshold chart. These amounts are very important for a landlord to be familiar with if they are seeking to terminate a tenancy for non-payment of rent. Because the rule is, if the tenant owes less than these amounts here in the current year, then the tenant cannot be evicted for non-payment of rent. So for example, if the tenant's unit is a 1-bedroom unit right here, and the tenant owes $2,000, the owner cannot terminate the tenancy because 2,000 is less than 2,081. Now, if the tenant owed $3,000, then the owner could pursue a termination of tenancy for non-payment of rent, since $3,000 is more than 2,081. And again, it's based on the number of bedrooms in the tenant's unit. So if the tenant's unit was a 4-bedroom unit, the amount goes up. And the owner could not evict unless the tenant owes more than this amount. There are other city requirements that a landlord should consider when initiating a termination of tenancy. The first one is that the unit has to be registered every year, and the owner must obtain a copy of the certificate of registration and give a copy of that certificate and post it at the property in an accessible common area. The certificate of registration is obtained by the owner when they do 2 things: pay the registration fee, and if it's an RSO unit, complete the rent registry form. For units that are subject to the just cause ordinance, the owner also has to pay the registration fees, and we do recommend that they complete the rent registry form for the year 2025. Secondly, the owner must post in an accessible common area at the property a copy of the renter protections notice. The renter protections notice is found on our webpage in multiple languages, and the owner can download a copy of that notice at this site right here. Third, the owner must ensure that if the reason for termination of tenancy on the notice is being filed is for non-payment of rent, you have to remember that the municipal code requires the notice include the total number of bedrooms for that unit and the total monthly rent. So those 2 elements are required by the city law in non-payment of rent notices. How does an owner obtain the certificate of registration or obtain a copy? Well, as stated before, after the owner has paid the registration fee and completed the rent registry, that's when they receive the certificate. They may receive it via email, or they may get a copy of it sent to them via mail. But the owners can also download a copy of it at our website located here by entering the address or the APN number in this box, selecting which year the owner is seeking the certificates for, and then clicking the download button. If nothing downloads, that's an indication that there is no certificate of registration that has been issued. And the owner should contact the housing department to inquire about the status of registration, and to be able to complete the registration process if there is something missing. An owner can download the renter protections notice from our website as well in multiple languages. And you see an image of that notice on your screen. It's 2 pages. And it's a summary of renter protections in the city of LA. Now moving on to how an owner actually files the notice. Other than delivering it in person to a public counter or sending it in the mail with the cover sheet, which we reviewed earlier, it's right here. So if you do it via mail or in person, you have to print out this cover sheet and include it with your notice. But if you decide to do it online, which is the fastest way, you can access the link to our online filing portal by going to our main website, housing.lacity.gov. And there you will see a list of services. One of the services will be file a tenant's eviction notice. When you click on that, it will open up our eviction notice webpage, which is at this link right here. So there, it gives you a brief description of the program and contains various hyperlinks. On that page, you will see a section titled Upload Notice to Terminate Tenancy, Eviction Notice. Here you will click on the blue box that says click here to upload a notice to terminate tenancy. And that will open up a page that shows you our online portal for filing the notice. It does require that the user have an Angelino account. So if the user, either the owner or the owner's attorney or a representative of the owner, whomever the owner appoints, if they do not have an Angelino account, they can create an Angelino account by clicking the hyperlink down here that says sign up here. If they have an Angelino account already, then they just have to click on the green button that says sign in with Angelino. And this is essentially what a user would have to do to create an Angelino account is use their email address and select the password to create that Angelino account if they do not have one. If they do have one, then they just have to go back to this page, click on the sign in with Angelino, and then it will open up the actual eviction filing system for the user to submit a notice. To begin, the user, the owner, can click this blue button that says submit new notice. And note that there are recommended browsers. So if the user is having issues with the system, one of the things we recommend they do is to ensure that they're utilizing one of the 4 recommended browsers down here. Once the submit new notice button is clicked, it will open up the form so that the owner can enter the required information. Please note that at the top right-hand side, you will see the status of draft. As long as the user continues to see the status draft, that means that the filing is not completed. The first question that the system will ask is to select the eviction category. And there are 2 eviction categories, at fault or no fault. And if you recall, one of the first few slides that we reviewed was a list of the at fault and a list of the no fault reasons. So based on that, the owner selects the category. So in this example, we selected the at fault reason. That will then ask the user to enter the name of the owner down here. And once that's done, the system will ask the user to search or select the tenant's address. So there are 2 ways that the user could do that, either by searching for the property by address or searching for the property by APN. If you know your APN, that may be the most accurate and quickest way to find the property. But you can still find it by searching using the address. So for example, if your address for the tenant is 200 North Spring Street, you can enter the address here under house number. You would enter the number only, the 200. And under street name, you would enter only the name of the street, which is Spring. You would not enter street. You would not enter north. So those items would be removed. You do not enter the directions of the street or the acronyms such as street, avenue, or boulevard. So in this example, we've entered 200 Spring. You click on search by address. And then you will get a list of addresses. Depending on the address that is searched, there may be only one address to select from. There may be 2 or there may be 5, 10 or more. For example, a condominium project might have 20, 50, 100. It just depends on the size. So one thing to keep in mind is that if your search results give you a large number of options, make sure to look on the bottom right-hand corner and click next or last or the page number until you find the address that you're looking for. In this particular example, our search results only gave us 2. One was 200 South Spring and one was 200 North Spring. And if you recall, the example we're looking for is 200 North Street, 200 North Spring Street. So in that case, we're going to click the select button right here. We click that button once, and the system will know to pick the correct address that you selected. And as you can see in the next slide, it has inserted the address that you selected. Next, the system will ask you to enter the unit number, if there is a unit number, right here. If there's no unit number, then you just select the checkbox. And you also enter the number of bedrooms in the tenant's unit. Next, you will enter the tenant information. And similar to the paper form that we reviewed earlier, the cover sheet, here you only have to enter one tenant name, even if your notice has multiple tenant names. We also ask that the owner please provide the telephone number and/or the email address for the tenant if known. Next, the owner selects notice details. So notice type would be, is it a 3-day notice, a 30-day, 60-day, etc. And then the notice date would be the date that the notice is served. So for example, if you have a proof of service date, it would be that date. You would then enter the reason for eviction, and you would click on the box, all the reasons that apply. Then you would enter the rent details. So the system will ask you, what is the tenant's current rent? You would enter that there. And when you enter the tenant rent, if the reason for eviction is non-payment of rent, the system will also ask you, what's the current tenant rent and what is the rent amount owed by the tenant? And if you look on the right-hand side, there is a chart that we reviewed earlier on what the amounts are that a tenant must owe in order for an owner to be able to terminate the tenancy for non-payment of rent. The owner then uploads a copy of the actual notice to terminate tenancy that was served on the tenant. An owner may use the LHD cover sheet that is intended for the owners who mail in their notices, but you do not have to. Some owners prefer to do it. Some owners don't. It's not required for the online system. However, please keep in mind that uploading a copy or filing a copy of the LHD cover sheet is not sufficient. It has to be the actual notice, a copy of the actual notice to terminate tenancy that was served on the tenant that must be filed with LAHD. If you also want to submit the cover sheet, then you may do so as well, but be sure it includes the notice to terminate tenancy. A technical rule here is the format of your document type. So the system does support various electronic formats, and they're all listed here in this text box that you'll see when you're filing online. It does accept the most common formats, but there may be some less common, less used formats that an owner might be trying to utilize that will not be supported by the system. In that case, the system will not accept the filing. It will not go through. So it will not comply with the requirement to file the notice. So please be sure that whatever document you are uploading is in one of the formats listed here. In order to upload the notice, the owner must click the blue upload button and select the document that they want to upload. Once they have uploaded that document, it will show up right here in blue text. If an owner decides that that was the wrong notice and they accidentally uploaded somebody else's notice and they want to fix it, all they have to do is click on the trash can icon right here, and they'll be able to remove the incorrectly uploaded notice. And then they can start over again here by clicking the upload button and uploading the correct notice. Next, the owner will be asked to indicate who is signing, essentially who is submitting this notice. When the user clicks on the down arrow, it will provide a list. One of the options is owner, and there are other options such as an attorney or a manager and so on. And the system will automatically insert the email address of the submitter here. And it will know your email address because of the Angelino account. The Angelino account requires that the user register their email address. So that will automatically be inserted here. Once the owner has indicated the signature information, the system is going to ask the user to double check and confirm that the rent amount and the rent amount owed is correct if the reason for termination of tenancy selected was non-payment of rent. It will ask you to confirm both, and the user can click on the down arrow here and select either yes, the amount is correct, or no, the amount's not correct. If the user has indicated that the amounts previously entered were not correct, the system will then pop up this window here on the right-hand side that will give you a blue hyperlink named Update Monthly Rent or Update Rent Owed. That blue link, you can click on it, and the system will take you right back to the data field to correct the information. One important feature of this online system is that it contains an alert for the filer. If the rent owed, for non-payment of rent cases, if the rent owed is less than the amount for fair market rent, the user will get an alert notice in the system that the notice violates the law. So in this example on your screen, it was for a two-bedroom unit. And for a two-bedroom unit, the tenant must owe $2,625 in order for the owner to be able to terminate the tenancy for non-payment of rent. In this example, the tenant only owed $1,000, and that's why the system provided this alert right here, informing the filer that that notice to terminate tenancy does not comply with the law. Whereas if the tenant owed more than the fair market rate, the system would not provide an alert and it would just let the user proceed. So in this example, the tenant owes $3,000 for a two-bedroom unit, which is more than the $2,625, and there is no violation of the law here. Once the owner has completed the data entry, the system should provide a submit button. But if you see here on your screen, there is a submit button, but it's white. If the submit button is white, it's an indication that the form is missing information that's required. And so the owner at the bottom of the page will have a list here in red of what is missing. So in my example, you see that I did not enter the name of the owner, notice type, notice date, or the reason for termination. And the system is letting me know that that's what's missing. So then the user can click on each one of these items, and they are hyperlinked. The system will take the user back to the data field section where the owner can insert, or the user can insert the missing data and ensure that it's complete. Once it's complete, the user will be able to check box the declaration box here, which is essentially a statement under penalty of perjury, just indicating that the attached documents are true and correct. And the user clicks the submit button, which is in blue. And that is how an owner can file the notice online. The user then can go back to their account, and part of their account is a list of my eviction notice submissions. And there, any notices that that particular user files with the housing department will be listed here. So it keeps a record for you. Now, in addition to the owner being able to see what was filed, LAHD also has a general web page that anyone in the public can access by clicking on this link right here. When the public clicks on this link, they're able to see various information about the property, including eviction notices that are filed. The information is limited. For example, it's not going to contain the names of the tenants, but it does contain the filing number, the type of eviction category, notice date, type of notice, and the date that the housing department received it. If the public needs more detail, they can submit a public records request. At this hyperlink, they fill out this form, and our custodian of records will then generate a copy of the eviction notice along with a declaration of the eviction notice status, the eviction notice filing status. And on your screen, you see just a bird's eye view of the declaration. It's a 3-page form, which essentially tells the public that's requesting the public records whether or not a notice was filed, and if it was filed, the date it was filed, and how it was filed, online, via mail, in person. The declaration is lengthy, it's 3 pages, but that's mainly because it explains the requirement for the program, the requirement to file the notice, the methods used to store the notices, the methods used to search for the notices. And this declaration can also be requested to be certified by the custodian of records staff as an official city record. So that can be requested by anybody in the public. This is pretty typical, pretty commonly requested when there is an unlawful detainer case and the parties want something official from the housing department to show the status of the filing. So it can be requested by the owner or by the tenant. If the public has questions about this program or any other program implemented by the housing department, they can send us a question online via our Ask Housing app. It also does require the use of an Angelino account. The user will then fill out this form that will be sending an email to various departments or various sections in the department so that it can be answered. The public can also subscribe to the LAHD newsletters for any updates, including webinars and any changes in the law. And to subscribe, you can click on this link here, or you can go to any of our web pages at LAHD, and at the bottom, you'll see a subscribe button. And of course, the housing department also has a general hotline number that the public can call for general questions, a number to request, and at that number, you can also request to RSVP for future webinars. We've already reviewed how to send an email with questions, signing up for a newsletter. And then lastly, I just want to point out that LAHD does have a YouTube channel with various videos, including this one will eventually be posted. And these videos are on various topics, including how to register units, how to process no fault evictions. Each topic can be pretty detailed, so there's no opportunity today to go over all of these topics in detail, but the public can watch the previous videos that are posted on our channel. I would just suggest to the public to be sure that you're viewing the most recent videos. So essentially anything that was done this calendar year will be the most recent information. And that's it for the topic.